Now, in the interest of full disclosure, I have to tell you all the things that this course is not about. Because biology is a vast, vast subject. In a mere 25 lectures, like we're going to have here, we can't possibly do what usually gets done in a lot of introductory biology courses. So I have to tell you what those are, and I have to tell you they're really interesting, really important, and my only hope is you will be interested enough to want to follow on and learn more biology to learn about them. But because this is usually the traditional fare of an intro bio course rather than the stuff I just talked about, I feel obliged to describe this. So, because it's really very, very important. So, section 2. What's not in this course? A, the stunning diversity of life. If you think about it, introductory biology courses teach you the kingdoms and the phyla and the genera and the species and all of that systematics of the amazing things that are here on our planet. Whoops. We're working on it, guys. There we go. All the different plants, all the different animals, all the different bacteria and fungi and things like that, the extraordinary diversity of life. Life is amazing. I'm not going to tell about that at all. I'm not going to describe all of this amazing diversity. It is worth really learning about it. It's a motivation. But I'm going to assume that you've observed around you for a long period of time how much extraordinary diversity there is. And rather than the diversity, what I want to do is focus on the commonality. When I speak about the secret of life, I'm talking about what is common to all of life, what underlies all of life. And for that, we kind of have to forget about the differences. In this course, there is no difference between an elephant and a mouse. Although outside of this room, you would be well advised to pay attention to that difference. We're not even going to fuss a great deal about the difference between a sequoia tree and a mouse, right? There are significant differences, but it's really not going to be the thing we care a great deal about in this course. Instead, if you can bring up our pretty picture while I bring this down. Oops. Instead, what's really common to us is at lower and lower levels of organization. See, you can study life at the level of an entire biosphere, an entire planet interacting. At the present, we are aware of exactly one biosphere. The only biosphere we know about is the Earth. At a lower level, one can really study ecosystems. Sets of interacting organisms of all different sizes, all different varieties. Say a forest on the Earth, like that forest I brought up over there. You could study an individual organism within an ecosystem, like a human being, maybe an MIT undergraduate, for example, walking in the forest. At a lower level, you could study, MIT undergraduates walk in the forest, right? They do sometimes, right? That's okay. You could study an organ. An organ like the eye of that MIT undergraduate in the forest looking around at the amazing things in the forest and study the eye as an entire organ. You might decide to study it at a finer level, not the whole organ, but individual tissues within that organ, homogeneous sets of cells. So you might study tissues like the retina in that eye. So we have muscles, and we have a lens, and the retina is back there, so you might study the retina. You might decide to study individual cells in biology, like a specific cell type in the retina, like the rod cell. A particular funny kind of cell that's involved in being able to receive light and detect light. And the cell biology of rod cells could be really interesting. You can zoom into a higher level and study organelles within the cell, subcomponents of the cell. You might study the nucleus of the cell. You might study the mitochondrion of the cell. You might decide to study the molecules of life. In the nucleus, the DNA. From the mitochondrion, the ATP. All of those are important, valid ways to study biology. They're all important, and to really understand biology, you've got to know all of those different levels. But because we're interested in fundamental principles, we're going to ignore the top of that picture. And we're going to focus down at the bottom. We're going to look not at the mouse, not at the mouse. You're not going to look at the whale and the elephant and the mouse. We're not even going to be up here at the level of a coffee bean or a grain of rice. We're going to mostly be zooming in. We're going to zoom in. We might start getting interested over here at particular cells. Very little we're even going to say about organs and things like that. As we zoom in further, skin cells, blood cells, Baker's yeast, the whole X chromosome. As we zoom in further, mitochondria. Here's a bacteria. As we zoom in further, we get down to viruses. As we zoom in further, we get down to proteins and big complexes like ribosomes and proteins like hemoglobin and antibodies. And zooming in further, we get down to sugars and water molecules and carbon atoms. And we will not go further than that. We have to leave something for the physicists to do, right? So we're down here because the truth is, once you get down to this level, carbon atoms were all the same, water molecules, adenine, phospholipids, transfer RNAs. I know these words may not mean anything to you, it doesn't matter, but all these sorts of things are more and more common to life. And as we come out of here, all the diversity comes in. But I would argue we can't understand the diversity without understanding the commonality. Take a few minutes to think about what you've just heard by answering this question.